1920s. What an awesome time, wasn't it? Prohibition was in effect. Jazz and swing music just made their way into becoming mainstream. You have this awesome outfit called flappers, which, by the way, can we just talk about this image that I found real quick? This is the most lifeless, soulless image of a person posing for a photo I think I've ever seen. But not the point, because in 1922,
I murdered my wife.
So, for those of you that don't know, 1922 is a book written by Stephen King. Also, the movie that just came out on Netflix, because it's Halloween time, so they figured why not release a Stephen King movie. So, I wanted to talk about that movie and the concept of guilt and how that's portrayed in the movie, and also how they do some foreshadowing, because I think it's a great way to show it. So, for those of you that don't know, in the context of the story, Wilf, who is our main character, along with his son, end up killing the wife slash mom. Basically because the dad doesn't want to move to the big city because, as he states,
In 1922, a man's pride was a man's land, and so was his son.
so he comes up with a plan to kill the mom, but first he has to convince the son. So he ends up basically telling the son, hey, look, if you end up moving, you're not going to be with your girlfriend, you're going to leave this entire life. You know how it is, make a kid feel basically like the other parent is shit, because that's how that's supposed to work. So he ends up convincing the son to kill the mom. So they kill the mom. As soon as they kill the mom, and they end up throwing her body in the well, you see rats. Rats are a huge sign for guilt throughout this entire movie. Anytime a rat shows up, it's Wilf or Henry and their guilt with what's going on. More or less Wilf. So let me give you some cool examples. So first off, we have right in the well, right, the rats that crawl around her dead body within minutes, right? Like 5 minutes after throwing her into this well, all these rats show up. Right, one crawls out of her mouth. It's all kinds of, it's nasty, right? So, and then as the film progresses, right, obviously, Henry, it's freaking out. Well, in the best way a kid from the 1920s can. So, in his mind, that's just hoping that there's no heaven or hell so that he doesn't have to die.
I can't pray now ever again. If I got down on my knees, I think God would strike me dead. I hope there is no God. I imagine all murderers hope there isn't, because if there is no heaven, there is no hell.
Son, I was the one who killed her.
No, Pa. We did it together.
So, and as a side plot, Henry ends up getting the girl he is dating pregnant. So then the girl, in typical 1920s fashion, is supposed to be sent off to a school and then get an abortion and then come back home. Right. So of course Henry runs away with the girl, and then that as a subline, basically Henry ends up robbing places. They become bandits. They both end up dying. It's really it has nothing to do. It's just a way to extinguish Henry. So when we transition back to Wilf, as I stated earlier, you slowly see the amount of guilt that ends up happening. Now there's only one scene in the movie that I cannot, for the life of me, truly understand, because throughout the entire movie, anything that he sees that is the embodiment of the dead wife, rats, things like that, that is the embodiment of his guilt. Now some of the rats are physically there, right? Like the rat that bites him when he's looking for money, right? The rats that show up in the factory when he's talking about what he did with his life afterwards, right? Those rats are real. right? Most of them, I would assume, are. But then you have the ones that are the figments of his guilt. Walk down the steps and follow him into the basement. But there's a scene where he's basically... The way that they show Henry dying isn't by just saying, oh yeah, look, Henry died. He says, well, this.
She whispered secrets to me only a dead woman could know.
And the thing that weirds me out about that is, well, this entire time it's been an embodiment. So, are you trying to tell me that only within this one scene it was a physical ghost that, you know, whispered to him? Or did he find this out other ways and that's just how they, you know, visualized it? Like, did he find out by the sheriff? Because earlier you see the sheriff talking about a boy that robbed a bank. So, I'm not exactly sure on that scene. So, if you have any thoughts, let me know. But now back to my main point. As we slowly see Wilf descend more and more into this madness of guilt, basically, like I said, you see more rats, right? He ends up not fixing the roof of his house, right? He lets snow in. He lets the cow in so that it can stay alive. Now, that's another point that I want to touch on. The cow throughout this movie. The first time I watched this movie, I didn't think much about it, right? I'm just like, okay, cool, it's a cow. They used it as a distraction to give a reason to fill the well, because the cow fell in the well. And, of course, the cow fell earlier, so he had to kill it, right? So I didn't think much of it, but going back through a second time, I realized that it's a really good foreshadowing of Wilf. Not only physically, but also in terms of a literary standpoint. Because the first time the cow falls is right after they kill it, right? They push the cow down the well, right? So then that cow is crippled and they have to kill it. So that could be killing any kind of Wilf's, you know, thought of, oh, this was such a good idea, this was great, this was totally the thing to do, right? So that could be the transition to his guilt. And then the second cow that ends up dying could be the physical foreshadowing of his death that happens only a couple of scenes later. Because what ends up happening, the cow trips on the steps and Wilf has to shoot the cow. So, I don't know, let me know what you think. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but at least that's what I've seen. So, to kind of just wrap this up, right? When looking at guilt and how it can be portrayed, I really think they do a fantastic job of giving a consistent visual that also has to do with a hard-hitting message, right? And of course, Wilf closes it with this line.
Henry was right. There was another way. There always is. But in 1922, the conniving man inside Farmer Wilfred James had begged to differ.
Which can really show, okay, even though all this shitty stuff happened, you see the growth of character. You realize that there's always another way to do something, you know. Now, again, with this movie, clearly, it's an extreme example because no one that's physically okay or mentally sound is going to, you know, kill their wife and convince their son to help, right? But if you look at it as a whole, and it's saying, okay, look, your actions have consequences, you must pick the best one, not the one that you think spur of the moment will solve your issue.
In the end, we all get caught.
So, yeah, I think that'll do it. Thanks so much for watching this week. Next week, I'm gonna do one on villains, so stay tuned for that. And, you know, subscribe if you want to subscribe, or don't. You know, I don't really care. Anyway, peace out.